Hello everyone, I'm Esther Shin and I'm here to talk to you about our world's population. Our current world population is at 7.3 billion humans. According to the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs report, the world population is expected to increase to 8.5 billion by 2040 and 9.7 billion in 2050. So is this growing population a problem? I'm sure many of you have heard claims about how if our human population keeps growing, then our world will become overpopulated. During my initial research, I found that our population demographic is actually quite complicated. I had to ask myself, is our population growing exponentially? During my research, I found that this is not the case. In fact, our population growth rates have been decreasing. Between 1950 and 2000, the population grew at a rate of 1.76%. However, between 2000 and 2050, the population is expected to grow by 0.77%. There has been a shift in birth rates and life expectancy as a result of modernization. According to the modernization theory by Armour and Katsilas, modernization is a transformation from traditional or underdeveloped societies to modern societies. So if our population is expected to grow in the future, yet population growth rates are declining, what does this mean? This means that our world is currently undergoing an extreme demographic divide. According to PRB, demographic divide is the vast gulf in birth and death rates among world's countries. As you can see in the graph, the darker blue areas are countries where there is high development. Areas in lighter blues are countries where there is lower development. The demographic divide is on a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, there are countries where many developing countries have high birth rates and low life expectancies. These tend to be areas in the world where there's extreme poverty, less education, and less modernization. Yet on the other spectrum, there are wealthier countries with lower birth rates, but due to longer life expectancies are able to maintain their aging populations for now. These tend to be areas with successful economies, high education, and lots of modernization. So let's take Nigeria and Japan for an example. In 2005, both Nigeria and Japan had roughly similar populations. Nigeria had a population of 131.5 million and Japan had a population of 127.7 million. So let's take a look at these countries' demographics. The GNI PPP per capita, or gross national income in purchasing power parity divided by population, is one of the many ways to measure a country's wealth. In Nigeria, it was $930. In addition, majority of Nigerian citizens are living under poverty, with 91% of them living on less than $2 a day. In addition, many Nigerians do not receive proper education. However, on the other hand, Japan is one of the largest economies with a GNI PPP per capita of $30,400. In addition, Japan has a very advanced education system where currently over 95% of Japanese high school students graduate. Nigeria is considered less developed than Japan. There are clear educational and economical differences between these two countries. Furthermore, on average, a woman has 5.9 children in Nigeria, and whereas in Japan, the number is as low as 1.3 children per woman. There are also differences in healthcare and medicinal technologies, and therefore in Nigeria the average lifespan is 44 years, whereas in Japan the average lifespan is 92 years. Due to Nigeria's high birth rates, the country is expected to continue growing, and that trend is already noticeable because the population went from 131.5 million in 2005 to 185.9 million in 2016. However, Japan is expecting a decline in their population as the younger generation population is getting smaller and the older population is getting larger. Once the older population starts decreasing in the near future, the population can expect a more drastic decline. So there's clearly a stark contrast between these countries of similar population size. There are clearly disparities in the economy, living standards, and healthcare between these two countries. This is an example of demographic divide that is occurring in the world. So I concluded at the end of my research that it is important to know the truth about what is going on in our population. Initially, I was concerned with the topic of overpopulation, but found that the population issue is much more complicated than it seems. It is important to keep an eye out for changes in our population demographics to see what changes our world will have to expect economically, environmentally, and socially. We need to keep an eye out for this because every country is connected. So in the future, it is important to ask ourselves these questions. How will the change in these individual populations affect our world as a whole? Should the demographic divide be an issue that the world's nations need to be more concerned about? And lastly, how do you think our world's nations will change as a result of the demographic divide? All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Hope to see you next time.